Okay, so today we're going to finish up the notes on section 2. Also remember that next week, a week from today, you have a quiz on this section. It'll be on section 2. All 3 pieces of the homework that we did, but this whole complete section of notes. So again, remember you need to memorize or learn how to set up the 6 trig functions. So you're going to have to do it in tonight's homework as well. This was what you did in last night's homework, where you were given an ordered pair. That became your x and your y. You had to find the r value by doing x squared plus y squared and square root it, and then give the 6 trig values. This was for the quadrant angles, and we're going to be doing this today because you're going to be given some equations and they're going to ask you to find the value of it. So what we'll have to do is figure out, say, the sine of 90 using these 4 order pairs. The 1, 0, the 0, 1, the negative 1, 0, and the 0, negative 1. So we're going to see this coming up. This picture here is leading us into the unit circle. These are the reciprocal identities. You're going to be using these to do the homework tonight. It's going to say figure out what, say, cosine is given secant. So like, for example, these 2 examples, numbers 3 and 4, when you're doing the homework and you're completing questions 45 through 49, this could be the examples you would refer to. The instructions are going to say use reciprocal identities. Then the next slide that we covered yesterday, this part right here in this first top white box, this is where when you're doing the homework tonight, if they give you a question and they're going to ask you, and the instructions are going to say, tell me if this is possible or impossible. And the way that you'll be able to answer that question is by using the possible solution intervals for each of these trig functions. So for example, yesterday I told you that sine and cosine, they both had to be fractions. They had to be a positive or a negative fraction. So if in tonight's homework, when you get to this part of the homework where it asks you to write possible or impossible, a possible homework question could be, is the sine of theta, could you figure out a value for theta when sine of theta equals 2? And automatically when you look at this, you know that sine needs to be a fraction. So the answer to this question would be impossible, because there's no value that I could put in here for this angle measure, this theta, that would give me a 2 as the answer. Now, if I said secant theta equals 2, this one would be possible, because if you look over here in the white box, notice secant and cosecant, they have to be numbers that are greater than or equal to 1 or less than or equal to 1. And 2 is greater than or equal to 1. Then, let's say I told you tangent of 100. This one would be possible because tangent is any number. It's all real numbers. So when you get to that part of the homework where it asks you to say, is this possible or is this impossible, refer to this white box where they talk about the possible solution intervals. Then tomorrow night's homework is going to involve the Pythagorean identities. And this is where I left off yesterday. So I'm going to go and do an additional problem using the identities to find a value for, say, cosine. And then these are also the quotient identities. I don't think we'll use any of these yet. We'll probably start to see these in section 5.3. So this is where I left off yesterday. I believe the last one I did was number 5. So I'm going to do number 6 today. So when you're doing the homework, and this is actually going to be for part C's homework, not the homework due tomorrow, but the homework due Friday. When you're doing questions 79 through 83, it'll be similar to this, where they're only going to ask you to find one thing. But then when you get to the last two questions of the homework, number 87 and 89, instead of just asking you for one, they're going to make you do all six. But the process is still the same. So that's what we're going to be doing in the Part 2C homework. We're going to be using the Pythagorean identities. So let's take a look at number 6. So for number 6, when I go to try to figure out which Pythagorean identity to use, I'm going to look to see what was given to me. And what was given to me was, cotangent. So I'm going to look at my Pythagorean identities. You could go back to the previous slide. So the Pythagorean identity I am using is 1 plus cotangent squared theta equals cosecant theta, squared theta. Now, I'm going to replace cotangent squared theta with what they gave me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 1/2, and because I'm plugging it into a cotangent squared, I have to square this 1/2. I'm going to drop down the rest of the problem, or the rest of the identity. Now I need to follow order of operations. I need to evaluate the exponent first, and this gives me 1/4. Now I need to add 1 plus 1/4. Now I could add and just get 1 and 1/4. However, I'm going to have to square root it. So I'm actually going to make it an improper fraction. So I'm going to change my whole number 1 and make it 4/4. And then I can add it to the 1/4 and get 5/4. Now, at the beginning, they asked me for cosecant theta, not cosecant squared. So to get just cosecant, I need to square root both sides, giving me plus and minus the square root of 5/2 equals cosecant theta. Now, here's where I need to use my all students take calculus, because I need to figure out which one I need to keep. I'm not going to keep both plus and minus. This is where I'm going to go back to the beginning of the problem, and they're telling me my answer for theta has to be in quadrant 4. In quadrant 4, the only thing that's positive, this C for calculus stands for cosine and secant. The other 4, sine, cosecant, tangent, and cotangent, these are all negative. So because the only ones that are positive in quadrant 4, for my answer here, I'm only keeping the negative square root 5/2. Because that's what's negative in quadrant 4. So that's your answer. So when you're doing the homework 79 through 83, this is the Part C homework though, you're going to just find maybe, they're only going to ask you to find one thing. Then when you get to the last two questions, you're going to have to go back and find all 6. And again, you could use another identity to find a different one. All right, here's where we're, example 7, we're going to go back to the quadrant angles. So here it says, find the value of the 6 trig functions of an angle in standard position running through the order pair -4, 0. Whenever you're given an order pair that has a 0 in either the X spot or the Y spot, that tells me that it's going to be one of the quadrant angles. So remember, the 4 order pairs that we're going to use, The first one here for 0 and 360, this one is the order pair 1, 0. Over here, this one's going to be the 0, -1, or the 0, +1. And this is for 90 degrees. Then over here for the 180, this will be the -1, 0. And then for the 270, the order pair here is 0, -1. Now, I know the order pair that was given to me, though, is the order pair -4, 0. So let's figure out where on my axis -4, 0 is located. And you can see it's going to be located over here. So the type of angle that they're asking me to draw, if I start here on my initial site at 0 degrees, and I come around and I stop at that order pair, I've just drawn a 180-degree angle. So what this question wants me to do is find the sine of 180, the cosecant of 180, the cosine of 180, the secant of 180, the tangent of 180, and the cotangent of 180. Now, I could use the order pair they gave me, but remember, we can also use the initial ones I showed you. So I'm going to be using this order pair because it's still on the 180-degree angle. So whenever they ask you to find the value of the 6 trig functions and it's one of the quadrant angles, you don't need to use the order pair they give you. You can use the 1, 0 or the 0, 1, the -1, 0 or the 0, -1. Now, let me show you what happens if we were to use the order pair they give us. If we use the order pair they give us, we just have to simplify each of the ratios. So, for example, remember we need to find the R value. So what makes it easier, if I'm just going to use the order pair -1, 0, my X is -1, my Y is 0, and remember for all 4 of these, the R value is always 1. Now, if I choose to use the order pair they gave me, I need to find the R value. It won't be 1. So what I need to do is X squared plus Y squared, and I get -4 squared plus 0 squared gives me 16. I square root it, and my R value is going to be 4. So let's say we go ahead and we do the sine of 180, but instead of using this information up here, I'm going to use R equals 4, X equals -4, and Y equals 0. Watch what happens. So sine, back from that second slide, we know sine is Y over R. So I'm going to put 0 over 4. This simplifies to 0. If I come up here and use these numbers and do the same thing, Y over R, my Y is 0, my R is 1, I still have it simplified to 0. I'm still going to get the same answers for all the trig functions. Let's do cosine. Using these values for X, Y, and R, cosine is X over R. My X value is -4. My R is 4. Notice it simplifies to -1. Let me come up to the top. Again, I'm still doing X over R, but this time my X is -1, my R is 1, but it still reduces or simplifies to -1. So this is why it doesn't matter As long as you figure out which angle that terminal side is stopping on, you can use that first order pair. You don't have to waste time finding the R value for this. It's a lot easier to use those original very first order pairs, and then your R is always 1. So let me just go ahead and finish the other 6 trig functions just using this information. Because again, we need speed, so we need to figure out what's the fastest way I can do the problem. So cosecant, remember, is the reciprocal to sine, so R over Y. So 1 over 0, this one's undefined. Then reciprocal to cosine is secant, R over X, 1 over -1, simplifies to -1. Tangent, Y over X, my Y is 0, my X is -1, this one simplifies to 0. And then cotangent, flip it, X over Y, -1 over 0, and this one is undefined as well. And that is it for these quadrant angles. Now, the next slide, we're actually going to use the information we just calculated. Now, if you don't have the convenience of having just done the problem, then you're going to just quickly have to figure out the values by doing the problem. Everybody good on this slide? All right, let's try the next one. 2, let's see. The answer for number 9. So when it asks you to simplify, and it's asking you to simplify a problem, and the angles that they're giving you are all the quadrant angles, then we're going to quickly do the problem. So for example, for the first one, I'm going to be figuring out what secant of 180 is. Once I figure that out, I times it by the 3. Then the same thing here. I need to figure out tangent of 360, and then I'm going to times it by the 5. And then I'll subtract those two values. So let's go ahead. I know we just did secant of 180, but let's go ahead and do it real quick. You know that the 180 should be over here. 0 and 360 are here. So the order pair for 360 is going to be this one, but for the 180, it's going to be this one. So if I come over here and draw the 180-degree angle, I need to find secant of 180. So again, my X is -1, my Y is 0, and my R is 1. When I go to do this, secant, remember it's the reciprocal of cosine. So what I can do is put it in here upside down, R over X, 1 over -1, simplifies to -1. So here, I'm going to write 3 times -1. Maybe I'll put it in darker. Now I have to do tangent of 360. So for the 360, I'm using this order pair. Remember, tangent is Y over X. So my order pair here, X is 1, Y is 0. So 0 over 1, tangent of 360 is 0. So I put a 0 here. Now I'm going to go ahead and multiply. 3 times -1 is -3. 5 times 0 is 0. -3 minus 0, and my answer is -3. So when you go to do the homework for this, you're going to need to figure out what the values for these trig functions are, and then multiply it if it's got a number in front. Let's try the next one. So when you're doing the homework tonight, these are going to be numbers 23 through 27. Let's try the next one. Well, we just found tangent at 360. I found that to be 0, so I can put a 0 here. Now I have to go back and do sine of 180. So over here I can use these same order pairs, or the same values for the order pair and the R. Sine, remember, is going to be y over r. My y value is 0. My r value is 1. When the 0 is in the numerator, it simplifies to 0. So here I'm doing 4 times 0. I now need to do cosine of 180. Cosine is going to be x over r. Negative 1 over 1 simplifies to negative 1. Notice it's cosine squared, so when I put it in here, I'm going to do negative 1 squared. So 0 plus 2 times 1, because negative 1 squared is positive 1. And then my final answer is just 2. So you'll have to figure out, without a calculator, using those order pairs that are sitting on the axis. Now the other thing that's in the homework, and these are for questions 57 and 59, they're going to give you some given information. They're going to say, for example, sine of theta is greater than 0, and cosine theta greater than 0. They're going to say, given this information, when sine is positive, that's what it means by greater than 0. So when both sine and cosine are positive, which quadrant is theta located in? And here's how you'll do it. You're going to use your acronym. All students take calculus. Remember here, all 6 are positive. The only positive ones here are sine and cosecant. Here, tangent and cotangent. And here, cosine and secant. So what I like to do is I'm going to first put check marks in all the quadrants where sine is positive. So I know for sure everything's positive there, so that gets a check mark. And then the other place that sine is positive is in quadrant 2. Now I'm going to go back and do the same thing for the cosine. Again, I know cosine is positive in quadrant 1, and it's also positive in quadrant 4. The answer to this question will be the quadrant that has the 2 check marks. So the answer where theta will have a positive sine value and a positive, and a positive cosine value is going to be quadrant 1.
So the answer to these type of questions will usually be quadrant 1 unless they give you 2 from the same quadrant.
So let's change the problem. So let's say where sine is greater than 0 and where cosine of theta is less than 0. So let's go back. Let's go ahead and do our thing again. All students take calculus. So I know sine is positive here and here. And I know cosine is negative here and here. So the one where there's 2 check marks is going to be quadrant 2. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if they're both positive, it's going to be 1. But if one of them's negative, then you got to go through and put the check marks. Everybody good? All right, so that concludes the notes for section 2.
So the answer for number 9 would be what's called what you circled.
Let me go back here. The answer is 2.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any questions? Anybody need me to go back to any slides? Okay, so you do have homework tonight. It is the 5-2B. However, you can also, if you've already done it, you can also do the 5-2C as well, because we covered every example you need to complete both assignments. Only 5-2B is due tomorrow. 5-2C will be due on Friday. And again, you have a quiz a week from today. It's next Wednesday.